are live. What's up, everybody? How's everybody doing? Hopefully, audio is sounding good. Levels looking good, at least on the switcher. So, hopefully, you guys can hear me and everything's good. But thank you guys. Welcome back to another weekly live stream. For those of you that are new here, that may be checking out this channel, my name is James Jackson. I am a filmmaker. I own my own film production company called D-Lumens Productions. We're based out in Philadelphia. But I have this channel here to sort of cover a lot of the latest and greatest in terms of news involving cameras and gears and things that we love in terms of filmmaking. But I am also like to give out tutorials and tips and tricks that can help you guys elevate your film gear. So that's sort of what we're going to be going into specifically today. With, as you see from the thumbnail, today we are going to be doing something inside of Davinci Resolve, which a lot of you guys who were here on the live stream last week, you all asked me if I could do some sort of tutorial or breakdown on specifically people asking me to how to convert something like the Sony FX3, which if you just go from do a color space transform, it still has kind of a digital look, but how can you make it more filmic? So we're gonna this is basically what we're going to go into, but also hopefully I can give you guys a better understanding of film, or I guess the film look, that not only you could do this with the FX3, you could do this with pretty much any other camera once you have sort of the general understandings of what we're going to be talking about. But if you are here in the chat, one, leave a like so YouTube knows you guys are enjoying this. But also let yourself be known, and hopefully everything sounds good and peachy. So, but we got fishing reels. Thank you for joining me. Excited for the tutorials. I can't wait either. So, barring anybody telling me that they can't hear me, I'm just gonna go sort of kick things off with an understanding of. Before we can sort of just talk about how do you get the film look, we kind of have to have an understanding of what is a film look. Because there are some very, very characteristics. Now, most of us know, especially through different film emulation and different plugins, where we throw things like halation, grain, maybe some vignette, there's some stock film stocks, depending on the plugin you have, or maybe there's some that sort of mimic film stock looks natively in Davinci Resolve, using a particular tool called the Film Look Creator. But what are some? Those to me are all the process of developing film. But what does film actually? What are some characteristics of film that help shape its characteristics and identity that people sort of emulate? So that's what we're going to discuss, and I'm going to start off with opening up Davinci Resolve and kind of show you guys. Let me move myself over here and kind of show you guys like some film stuff that we have done that kind of give that idea of what the film looks. So there's a couple of notes, and I think I'm going to start with oops, I meant to go over here. Sorry. I think I'm going to start with this this piece over here, and that is let me minimize these, and that is this this shot right here. And because by the way, all the shots that you're seeing right now are from 35 millimeter. These are all films that were shot actually on 35 millimeter film. They're either commercials or films themselves, or they are music videos. But this is a film. So some of the key things, obviously, a lot of people that will bring up film in general will bring up the fact that we got grain, but the characteristics I kind of want to point out to first all is how the highlight rolls off. And I bring all this up because this is stuff that while you can sort of work in post, This is stuff that you want to sort of think about when you're actually in production and when you're actually filming. So one of the things is that with film, the thing that most people talk about is like film has a very huge roll off, which is very, very true. But the way it doesn't just like have a, it's not, it doesn't just have like a huge latitude performance. It's how it goes as you go more and more into the high loft. So what it does, especially with its specular highlights that you see right here, it starts muting the colors of it. So the colors get a lot more muted. They get more desaturated, but the detail doesn't necessarily get lost. And you kind of see it right here. It's like as this goes up, you kind of see it a little bit on the skin, but you see it here on the wall. The colors get more muted as you go up in highlights, which is very, very different in how digital cameras work. Whereas when you start going into the highlights with digital cameras, they start losing the information much faster. Now, the benefit with digital cameras is they are significantly better than film in terms of underexposure and underexposure tonalities, which I think this is a good example also right here from Pulp Fiction. If you look at the parts that are under, information gets lost really, really quickly. So I think if I remember correctly, film has like, in terms of overexposure performance, even though the color can muted, the details are lost, it's anywhere between like 8 to 10 stops of performance where you still can get detail, but the colors just get muted. Whereas if you underexpose film, you may have a stop and maybe 2 stops at best, but at 2 stops, that's when you start losing details with film. And that also brings up a very, very interesting characteristic, which also will go into helping understand how the nature of film, which is that if you look at this shot right here from, by the way, all these stills and grabs, I want to just say very quickly, these come from the website Shot Deck, which is a fantastic source if you're trying to trying to figure out sort of the mood. If you want to build a mood board, you want to build an idea of sort of the look and feel of what your project wants to look. It's an amazing website with a reference. There is like a $200 annual fee. But if you are working consistently enough, honestly, that is worth it because it makes it so much easier to put projects together and also when you're asking people what you were looking for, it's easy to pull references that way and sort of show it off and sort of give them an idea of what they want. But the other point I want to talk about with film is skin. Well, also the skin and sort of where things sort of fall. So you'll notice with a lot of film, you got specular highlights that will break up into this last part of the waveform. But if you look at a lot of films like this is actually, I think, a Coldplay music video. You will notice that this highlight just stops right here. And this is something that I've noticed about a lot of films and even digital films, which I'll get to also in just a second, that really the highlights sort of hit this point right here for the most part. And then you got specular highlights. You'll have specular highlights that will creep up into this. And same thing here. But if you look at all these highlights, they're hitting mostly around the 896 area. They don't actually, your highlights don't ever go fully into like the full waveform except for like the specular portion with film. And then also, again, if you want to sort of show off, like another thing I want to talk about is skin. Look where, especially with shadow side skin, shadow side skin typically lives right around here, with a lot of films and even digital cameras are are trying to replicate films. And the reason being is because you have this very, very quick drop off with, again, the shadow portions where, and you'll see it here too, where it just falls completely. Your with film, blacks and like shadow portions do get crushed. So you with film, you always have to be specifically be able to light. And and when you're doing like very dramatic and moody scenes like this one, look where the skin's just like, you can kind of see it on the waveform. It's ending up. Actually, let me move myself real quick to the other side to give you guys a better look. But your skin tones will show, as you'll see here, it ends up mostly in this quadrant between like just under 40 IRE and like 25 IRE. And that's sort of where a lot of times skin sits. Now, that's not always the case, because again, when you got outside, you can see here, it's very bright. The skin sort of lands typically where most people expect to be, which is that 50 to 60 IRE. And this is, and even with this one in particular, but this one is like sitting where the skin is the highlight portion. So you'll see it sort of up here in the quadrant here. But if you look at the shadow side, the shadow portions like of this skin right here, it's all down here. So I'm bringing all of this up to sort of make the point that doing this to help you understand all of this that's actual 35 millimeter film and how this will help you before you even discuss color grading and what we can color grade in terms of the FX3. We need to understand just how characteristics of skin be. So I'm going to pull up some shots that I grabbed from the film Glass Onion, because I think Glass Onion is a great example of a digital camera trying to replicate the look of film. So in Glass Onion, we have this shot right here, where the specular highlights and the highlights very, very muted. It looks, well, it's not muted, but it gives this sense that there's a very soft, it's a silky roll off. It doesn't feel harsh, even though like this is clearly like clipped. This is clipped. And by the way, for those that are wondering, the Glass Onion was filmed with the Arri Alexa LF, which is the camera that most people would deem as the closest to emulate the look of film from a digital camera. And I bring up this up to sort of also look at how this, you can see, again, you see here where we're getting a lot of these muted highlights. If I bring this down, if I bring some of these down, and then I go to the color, and I'm going to go bring over to my color page, so you can kind of see. Look where the highlights are. Look where the highlight sits. They sit at that 80, 96 IRE. And then look where the skin tones are sitting for the shadow side. They're sitting roughly around, again, that 35 IRE zone, and then the key sides are anywhere between 60 and 70. This is a great point. Again, shadow side is sitting roughly around that 35 up to like the 50 IRE, and these are people with you try to do with more fairer skin compared to some people with darker skin. And I'll blow this up so again. And then you also got the aesthetics of like film grain that helps soften and get some of that texture back. So these are all things that the digital cameras, something like the Arri Alexa does. But if I go back here, even though I think it does a decent job of sort of giving that smooth highlight, it doesn't feel exactly the same. It gets close, but it doesn't. But if you compare that to if you compare that highlight roll off to this one, if we go back to this one, this feels a lot more creamy. This feels a lot more milky with the true 35 millimeter film versus, the RELX LF. But it does a pretty good job. The other things that we're starting to see, and also why we see a lot more of the skin tones in that lower quadrant, is because especially with digital cameras, that is where you get a lot more vibrancy with colors. If you try to push things a little bit too high into the overexposure, you get desaturated. For digital cameras, you start getting things getting desaturated a lot faster than film, and it gets you tend to not get this effect. So, how would we do this with a Sony FX3? So I've actually got a project set up. I'm going to just get ready to that, and I'm going to go through step by step on how I typically go through and get that look. Now, feel free, please leave your comments in the chat and let me know as I'm doing this, so you guys, if there's something that you want. Now, some of the stuff is plugins that I paid for. Some of these are plugins that are completely free, and I'm going to definitely go through that. But I'll also show how you can kind of get close to how I grade with just the natural stuff in Davinci Resolve, particularly in Resolve Studio. I think Resolve, if you have Resolve Studio, which is the paid version of Davinci Resolve, this will be much easier to get to. But you can theoretically do this as well in the free version. So, without further ado, let's go right in and get right into it. So, again, let me know if you guys have any questions. So I'm going to go ahead and load up. I think. Oh, that's actually. So I'm going to go ahead and load up the project, which I believe is it is. So I'm going to load up the project real quickly, which is in the test folder. Oh, nope, that's not it. Sorry, that's wrong. I think, no, it's back in the tutorial. It's in the vlogs. Should be here. Yeah, here it is. All right, here it is. So here's the timeline. So I have this, and I'm going to show you guys right here. I've got two clips that I have. The first one is a shot that I have from the Puerto Rican parade that that was just a couple days ago. I think this is a good idea to show how sort of we can go from this, which is basically a 709 look, to this, which is going to be where we're going to be aiming to get at. Which y'all gonna see, this is and I don't know how well it's going to look, how well this is going to show. Hopefully it's going to show pretty okay, because the color space on Ecamm is a bit different, but hopefully this will catch your idea. But you can see that there's definitely a difference between this shot and this shot. And I'm going to show how we can get sort of like this, which definitely has a lot more film characteristics that you see here versus this shot right here that has sort of like a traditional. I think most of this is sort of what you guys mostly get out of the Sony FX3. So let's go to the color page, and I'm going to work through this. So I want to just to show you guys. So with this timeline, I am working in Davinci Resolve, Davinci Wide Gamut Intermediate. That's the timeline space that I'm working with, and my output is Rec 79 Gamma 24. So the first thing that I always do is I basically take whatever footage. In this case, both of these are going to be S-Log3 S-Gamut 3.city footage, and I convert it to Davinci Wide Gamut. Because with all the tools that we're going to have here in the time on these clips, it's going to be we want to work in Davinci Resolve Gamma. The next thing, and then the next important thing I want to point out is this right here, which is what we call the print or the output. In this case, I'm using a DCTL, and this DCTL is called JP2499. It's what is called a DRT. Now, I have made videos on the DRT before. So if you guys want to check out what a DRT is and why I like this, definitely go check out. This is, by the way, this plugin is completely free, and I really enjoy it. But if you want to sort of just take this goes without it, so I'm gonna disable that real quick, and I'm gonna create another node, and I'm just gonna use color space transform. And then we're going to go from Davinci Y Gamut, and we're going to go to Davinci Image, and we're going to go to Rec 709, and our output, which of course is Gamma 24. So there is a bit of a difference. So, but this is, we'll just work with this sort of as our starting point for right now, just so it can be something that you guys can see and you can kind of follow along. So I'm going to clear myself out, and then we'll go back to this. So typically what I tend to do is try to balance, first of all, just get the balance out. So that's what I have here. So I'll reset this really quickly, and I'll disable this. So what I typically do is I use the linear balance, which is convert my gamma into linear. And what this does is basically, it basically gives the controls from controlling the gain. It gives us the ability to make changes almost as if we were as if we were making changes in the camera. The other thing I'm going to do is I'm going to reduce the Lumamix, and then let's see if I can blow this up. And then I'm just going to sort of follow my changes. And that's right there. And simple as that. The next thing I do is sort of, I feel this is a bit too overexposed. So the thing I want to do is I want to drop this, which is what this HDR, and I'm using the global. And the reason why, because it works linear, just like what I just did just now. Linear, when you're trying to make corrections, I find linear to be much better for this. So in this case, I use the global and bring it out. Now, remember one of the things that I want to bring this back here. So one of the things that we want to do is kind of find ways to mute this. And there's a few ways you can do this. The one way is you can use the HDR tools like here, and you can pull the highlights down to sort of mute them a little bit more. But then you can take the specular part and stretch those. So if you can see before after, it kind of mutes out the whites. But you would all, and then I would also then try to desaturate these, because that's kind of what, because again, it would mute it out and desaturate it. So that's one way. The other way, and the way I prefer to do this, is with Dehancer. Dehancer is a great tool for this, and the reason being is because it has a tool specifically designed to replicate that, which is called the film compression, which is this part right here. And it does exactly what it says. It pushes everything down, and it compresses the highlights and the impact. So you can see before, after, how it mutes those highlights in the way that we want, which gives us that sort of effect. And then the other point with Dehancer I like is I can pull this up. Even though it's compressing, I can bring it up to sort of really show off those highlights, and then pull the blacks down. Because remember, the thing with film, there isn't that much there isn't that much underperformance from middle gray, so there is definitely a bit more of a crushed look with the look of film. So that's why we're that's the main thing we're doing here, and that's really what the main thing I use the enhancer. Now I could put this. You obviously got the film stock stuff, but I want to just show what the key things that I use the enhancer for, because I know most of y'all are not going to may not have this, and if for those of you that may be interested in the enhancer, it is, yes, it is. For like the whole package, I believe it's like $450. But I will say it's still worth it after these years of using it, because it just helps me get what I need. But again, you can do this with the HDR palette by pushing and stretching the highlights and the specular, and then desaturating both. It helps it that way, but I just find this way faster. So the main thing here we want to do is we want to try to get these skin tones a little bit lower, because you get that way it has a little bit more vibrancy. And then the other main thing that we want to do is, we'll put here in the 6, is this tab right here, which is called the color slice. Color slice is something that came out in Davinci Resolve 19, and this is probably one of the features of Davinci Resolve since it came out that I use pretty much on every project. And essentially what this does, it does subtraction saturation, which is what film, typically how film does. And the difference between regular saturation and subtractive saturation is the fact that, think of subtractive saturation kind of like painting. When you actually paint, like if you have a wall and you want to paint it red, if you actually were to paint it red and then you would put another layer of paint on it, it doesn't get brighter. It actually gets vibrant and it gets darker. And that's kind of how subtraction saturation works with film, and that's also gives that look. So for me, with the thing that I always do is do a general boost in saturation, in the color slice, and general boost of saturation. So I'm going to just eyeball this for a little bit before I think it goes too crazy. So I would say right there. Oh, nope. And then I would say right there is good. The other thing is that we have this part that's called the balance. And essentially what this does is it shifts how much of that saturation you're applying to certain parts, to certain luminance levels. So there it goes from -1 to +1. Basically, the positive side is where you shift all the saturation to the higher exposed parts of the scene. The negative parts means you're shifting the saturation to the lower parts of the scene. And so with film, remember, with film, saturation happens mostly in the lower part of a scene. So of waveforms, saturation happens more often in the under part. So what I do is I typically do like a -0.5. And if I blow this up, you can see the before right here where it's got, and now you got a lot more of this vibrance. But this is only half of what the color slice does. The other part is this part, which is the density. And this is key. And what essentially density does is the more you increase it, the darker your saturations go. And this really helps keeps this three-dimensional pop, and also tones down stuff that's on the skin tone. So, and you don't even have to do a lot to it. So, as you'll see, I haven't done a lot, but look at the difference now. Look how much more color tonality that is in here. And then we can also adjust the depth of where it is, similar to saturation, but density depth does the reverse. So the more you increase, the more you put in the positive, the more it affects the stuff in the shadows. The more you push it to the negative, the more it affects the highlights. But again, we want to affect the highlights more. I'm at the lower quadrant more. So, so now, as you see, this is such a different tonality versus here, without where it was before, which had this. It was a good start point, but it still felt kind of flat. Versus now, there's so much vibrancy. I feel the reds are a little bit too much, so I'm actually going to try to mute. And the beauty about it is you can go into the different colors. So I'm going to increase the density of the reds, but also desaturate them because they may be a bit too much. And then I'm also going to desaturate the skin, which also this little sections right here give you the highlight the different parts. So like here, it highlights the skin. So I'm going to just desaturate this just a little bit, just a little bit. And now you can see where we are now versus before, after. And you can see there's so much. And I know so many people talk about the Sony FX3 and how people complain about the colors and stuff like that. Really, it's just having an understanding about how to manipulate it. It just takes an additional extra work. Because as you can see, this is, by the way, all of this is the HEVC 10-bit 422. So so this is like some of the most compressed options. But you can see here, it's holding. This is all holding well. I'm judging it on my computer. I think only the blues are maybe breaking a little bit too much. So I'm gonna just bring back the density of those, and then a little bit of the saturation. But yeah, but these things are, but as you can see here, it's doing well. And again, there's not really any artifacting happening, which is great, especially on the skin. So one, we can get sort of this vibrant colors, which is sort of a characteristic of film. We've got our skin, so I'll pull up, so I'll show the qualifier right here. We got our skin, this being the shadow side, in that lower quadrant right here, and then the skin being in that lower area, again, sort of emphasizing the tonality of where film typically be. And then our highlights have been muted, which again is a characteristic of film. So these are all little things. But of course, digital films, especially something like the FX3, still has a bit of like that really, really sharpness, especially if you have a sharp lens like I was doing here. Like I had a Carl Zeiss Batis 85. Absolutely love the lens. It's fire. I love the lens. But it does, like, there's definitely that sharpness. So we're going to now use Film Look Creator to sort of tone that down. So I'm going to save that, add another node, and then I'm going to, and Film Look Creator, which is a native plugin in Davinci Resolve. So it automatically defaults to a preset, and there's a series of presets. We're going to go with Clean Slate because we're going to basically just do everything from scratch. So the main thing that I want to do here is I want to just fade up I want to fade up because I want to lift some of these blacks. We still got this black, but keep in mind, film was also designed to work with display. A lot of it was designed for displays that did not have video data that reached to 0. So we're gonna just very, very slightly just like lift this up a little. So you'll see now, quickly before, after, before. Just give that little bit of a lift, just a little bit of a lift. And then we're going to do bleach bypass, which it's one of my favorite features of the Film Look Creator. And the thing about this is that it will desaturate everything else except the most vibrant parts. So the most vibrant parts will stay saturated. I personally love this to really tone in the skin tones. So I won't go too crazy with it, but just push it right here. And now you see, while there's a lot of vibrancy, and again, this is all, I should also say this is all semantics. It all depends on your project. If your project says you want vibrant skin tones, you want that skin tone to glow and pop, then hey, this may be a good start. If you want to sort of give it a little bit more of, again, what that film look, I tend to pull the skin back and bring it, just give it a little bit more neutral, because that's a lot. That's also what's famous of something on a digital camera like the RLX. It really neutralizes. It's a very neutral skin tone. So as you can see, the skin tones are well contained, but we're still keeping a lot of these colors. So we have that. The other thing that I want to do is I want to sort of just bump richness. So richness in the film look creator, essentially it does subtractive saturation to the most saturated parts of the scene. So again, I'm trying to just, and for this scene, I'm just trying to give a little bit of a boost, a little bit more life. Then let's get into sort of things to soften this image now, which is, I typically do it with like grain. Now I like using the preset, start off with the preset, which is 65 millimeter. So I can show you now what that looks like. So you can see before, after. I don't know how easy. You probably will notice it right here with the courthouse a little bit better. But I'm gonna just boost this up so you guys can see, and I'm gonna boost the size up quite a bit, and then softness. You see before, yeah, you can really see it now over here by the courthouse. So before, after, and that just helps, brings in some of that, softens up that, especially on skin, it softens it up and gives it a little bit layer of texture and detail. So just adding that little bit of grain. But I think this may have been, the amount may be too much. I'm going to just drop the amount, but I'm going to boost the size up. And then I'm going to boost the softness. That's better. So it took, also the other thing is, because of this, it takes some of that detail, that extra detail that you have out. So, which helps go along with that film look. So everything else from this point on is really semantics, but these are sort of the key things that I think are the things that you should look out for. So I know some people tend to use something like bloom and halation. I think those are all situation by situational things, because bloom is not really effect of, per se, film when you're actually shooting film production. Bloom is more of an effect of the projector that is projecting the film itself. So those are very different things. So I personally don't use bloom. Or I will use something like hazy. Use something like hazy, but that's all. But again, that's such a situational thing where it's more of, if I have a scene that can help sort of give a cool image with something like that has that blooming effect. That's when I would use something like that. But in terms of building a film look, I don't typically use that. Just like vignette, which I absolutely love, especially in the film look creator. Like I can activate vignette, and I absolutely love this because it just draws your attention in to whatever your subject is, and it also smooths out some of that highlights. But again, that to me is still a situational thing. But I do like a good vignette here. So this, again, vignetting is something that you could also be situational. But I think this is a decent way to go about this, and that's essentially it. It's sort of like, basically we go from our color space that we're working in, which is you want to work with a wide color space, because when you're grading, having a wider color space will just give you that flexibility of that tonality. Because I think people just don't realize there's a lot more there's so much more color information in your cameras, your 10-bit 422 cameras, than most people realize. And I always say 10-bit 422 is like the basic, the standard. 420 tends to have problems, but if you have a 10-bit 422, there's a lot you can do. So I always tell people, look, try to stretch that information out and see what you can do with it. And then you can build LUTs and things like that. So let me see what we got here in chat real quick before I continue on. So I got Robert here. Hey man, thank you. Let me break this down. Thank you, man. Thank you, Robert. I appreciate that. Trevor, okay, Trevor's in the building. Thanks for joining, man. People I know still shooting Sony say the color science is way better. When I shoot Sony colors, the colors were a nightmare. That was 7 years ago, maybe 6. So, yeah, I think it's just about taking time. To me, I personally think the Sony colors they're pretty good. Look, I think there's a lot of other cameras that have a much easier starting point than Sony, but these are all digital cameras. At the end of the day, they're all just ones and zeros. As long as you just first go with that mindset that these are all just ones and zeros, they just may have different starting point. If you know what you're working with, you can still get to the finish line just as well as the other cameras. But yeah, Sony's are something. I think the way you have to look at Sony is kind of like how you look at their menu systems, which is they have so much there that is very helpful, but it can be sort of daunting. It can be kind of daunting to try to navigate it. But once you understand it, the amount of information that Sony cameras give you for color grading as well as like the menu system and the things they have, it's just as good and sometimes better than some of its competitors. Yes, color science has gotten a lot better than 7 years ago. So you guys continue to have that. Again, if you guys have comments, definitely leave your comments in the chat or leave your questions in chat that you may want to sort of learn. So let's cut back to this and let's cut back to this and let's try to sort of get this look here. This time I'm going to work with the DCTL, which is JP 2499. And once again, let me remind you, this is a free DCTL. I would again check out my DRT video. I did do a video on this, and I sort of gave links to all of these, so you could go check them out and download them. They're very easy to install. Oh, by the way, I should point out that if you are going to try to get to install DCTLs, it should be noted that you can only install them for Davinci Resolve Studio. They do not work if you just have the free version of Davinci Resolve. If you have the full studio version, then these will work. But it's something I just think you should keep in mind for that. So let's go in here. Let's start back. First things first, I'm going to take a look at what it is. This is a shot I had at a college. It was a jazz fest that just kicked off. So again, Sony FX3. Again, this is the H.265. So the most compressed file out of all of them. So first things first, we're going to try to balance this scene. And I think I'm going to first turn this go to my gamma again and want to do linear. So, and then I'm going to go to my primaries. I am going to set my luma mix, which is down here. I'm going to set that all the way to 0. And then I'm going to just work this right off the gain. So I'm going to blow this up. Main thing I'm trying to do is sort of get a good clarity of his skin, which is very going to be hard to do because the lightings with this were not great lights, but I think just kind of eyeballing it right now, and I kind of feel that is the proper place to be. So that's the first thing. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to work the primaries, and I'm going to bring down. I'm gonna bring down my blacks and really crush them. Because again, film doesn't have a lot of latitude performance. Then I'm gonna bring up the whites a lot more with the gain. So just getting a balanced image out first. And now through that, I am going to go to my HDR. I'm going to go to the global, and I'm going to set where I want my skin tone. So right now, I'm going to I want to lift these up just a little bit more. So let's go here and let's lift this up to get the skins right where I want them to be, which is right about there. So, oops, that was not the area. That's not the node I wanted to work on. I don't know why I went back there. So let's try this again. Let's lift this up. Right, park it right there. So as you can, so right now skin, just like I'll go back to our grab examples. I'll go back. The skin, I'm sort of giving this reference again. The skin is, the highlight portions are like in the top parts of the 30, going into 45, whereas the shadows are all the way like either crushed or they're like in the 18 to 28 IRE range. This is sort of my reference that I'm going by. So we're here, and then so if I go back to this guy, the highlight portions, majority of it is like in that same quadrant, but the shadow side, which is like the opposite side, or we'll go this guy, same thing. Very, very crushed. So I think this is a good in terms of our corrections. Now we got to be now we're going to do color slice. So I'm going to be very careful because we're dealing with a lot of stuff in the shadows. I'm going to boost the saturation. Oh, too much. I'm going to boost it here. And I'm going to I'm going to go negative 0.5 to put most of that in the highlights, and then I'm going to boost up the density. Now you're really seeing the effect, especially in this window right here. Definitely in the skin. It's definitely affecting the skin. And another cool utility I want to point out that I have as a plugin that you may want to consider is called mononodes. And it's called the mononodes utility. It's an amazing tool. You can kind of see where the skin is. So like right here when he's in the light, he's cleared pretty well, but when he disappears, he's in shadows, and which has more of a magenta. Now, if you were to put the shot here, you would say, oh, we want to try to shift it. But honestly, when you turn this off, that's just the nature of the scene. Whereas when he's here, the skin tone indicator will say he's actually where he needs to be, which is more important. It's like, how is the skin being fed the light? But obviously, his skin is very, very saturated. So we're going to go back to color slice and dial this back quite a bit. So I'll go here so we can see, and then I'm going to dial back the skin. And I'm going to take away some of the density, but dial this back just a lot. So there we go. That's much better. And then what's cool? So yeah, so this is the color slice, and let's pull this up and let's look again before, after. look how much more dimensions you see it, and you see this here in the glass windows. You see this here in this window. You see it here in the suits, even in their skins, their instruments. There's so much. This creates such more depth. Um, so, but we kind of also, I think I want to sort of also neutralize some of the effects of the saturation. So what we're going to do is going to go to, as you see here, the curves, and we're going to go to Luma versus saturation, and I'm going to drag this point right about to here, and then I'm going to take this point and I'm going to start dragging this down just to neutralize a lot of that effect. So before, after. It's very, very subtle, but you see it on his suit a lot more. It's very, very subtle, but it's so helpful. I'll actually be more dramatic, and I'll pull some of this back so you can see a little bit more of it before, after. But I think this is a bit too much, so I'm going to pull that, and then I'm going to pull this right here, and then I'm going to scale this back just a bit, right there. The key with a lot of this is to be subtle, is to make subtle changes, but those subtle changes the subtle changes do a lot. And then the last thing I'm going to do is I'm going to add some of the textures with the Film Look Creator. So we're going to put that in. Now we can go ahead, and I think this is a pretty good, right here is already a pretty good like default with the 65 settings, but we're going to try to, start from scratch, and we're going to build everything out. And this one, because we're not using any stock footage from like Behance or anything from that, we're going to use a lot more of the Film Look Creator. So one, we're going to pull up, give some of that film look blend. And I've talked about the Film Look Creator. Rochester, each one of these is sort of works similar, is inspirational. Not inspirational. It's inspired by some of your favorite film stocks: Kodak, Fujifilm, alot, and Akasaka is Fujifilm's headquarters. Rochester is Kodak's headquarters. So you can kind of take a guess of which was which. So we want to sort of emulate more of the Kodak, so we're going to take that. Again, it's inspired. It's not, if you want a direct film stock, things like Behance, other plugins are going to be better, but I'm not here to do that. I'm here to sort of get more of my own taste of it. And then we're going to, again, boost up the fade just a little bit. I'm going to pump up this bleach bypass. This time we are going to add split tones. We're going to add split tones, and we're going to protect the neutrals. You're going to see when we crank this up. I'm going to just crank it up to like nth degree. Like, this is ugly. I wouldn't do it, but just so you guys can see the amount. I'm going to actually just do something like here. And I think that works. Well. Obviously, and then we got to add the grain. So I'm going to add the grain. I'm going to start off with the 65%. I'm going to bring this down, but I'm going to increase the size. And then I'm going to boost the softness of this as well. And I think this is a great I think this is a great look. And it changes the whole dynamic of like with the FX3, which gave sort of like a digital look, and now we have a little bit more of a film look. So if I was to take all of that we've done and then sort of remove all this stuff, this is what the 709 looks like. And now look at what we did to build that film look. So again, here is the 709, which was the how you would if you were just to transform it. And here is the film look that we built. Look how, and that is way more dimensional. And it's a lot of stuff, again, outside of the DCTO, everything that I showed you guys right here is essentially natively in Davinci Resolve. And the DCTL, if you have Resolve Studio, it's completely free. So uh, hopefully you guys enjoyed this tutorial and this was helpful for you guys. Um, Let me know again. I hope you guys have any questions. I'm gonna stay a while just for a little longer, and answer some questions for you guys, um, and just have a little chat. And then I'll just start heading out. So, Trevor, I think that they had green biases on the sensor. So yeah, that was definitely the case with a lot of the older cameras. I think a lot of the newer ones, and I'm sure I don't know if Robert's here, but I think a lot of the newer cameras they have more of a yellow. I would say more of a yellow bias than necessarily green. Um, they do favor yellow quite a bit, especially for their greens. Um, but that's something you can knock out. You can either knock out with a lens that sort of favors um, cooler your cooler quadrant. So um, things like Zeiss. Zeiss are known to be a lot more cooler, or something like Sigma's. Sigma glass is another guy. If you have Sigma glass, you can knock out a lot of that with it. So um, there's ways to counter it before you even get to Resolve. Um, but again, with Resolve, you got so many different tools that you can knock out a lot of that bias, that yellow bias. It's so easy to knock out. But I would also point out that in terms of film, an older film, yellow was like a typical bias for a film look. So again, it's depending on your preference. Been trying to use DaVinci Resolve on my iPad. How's that been going? I would love to know, man. I don't know. I personally have not. I haven't. I haven't tried it, but I also feel like I would be very very frustrated with trying to use Resolve on an iPad because I have so many different things where I just want to go to the keyboard and work with, and uh I but again, I would love to, and also I work with so much space, and work with so many drives. I need multiple ports. I think I would go crazy because I wouldn't have the ports needed to work off of. But yeah, let me know, Trevor. I would love to know how's that experience been. I really want to stop developing on computers. The iPad tablets have processing powers to do a lot of this stuff. Okay, awesome. Awesome. Uh, yeah, it's crazy how computers have gotten. Like, I mean, the power. Look at the power that the iPhone 17 is now the capabilities of that. Pretty soon, I'm pretty sure at some point, Blackmagic and Apple are going to find a way to allow you to install DaVinci Resolve on an iPhone, which in terms of I think would be a really cool way to get micro content, social media content, with more control for editing and grading. Uh, so I am at basically at an hour running. So it looks like there's not a lot of questions coming in. So I'm going to say this is going to be the end of it. So I really do appreciate you guys. Hopefully this was helpful. I don't know if fishing reels. Hopefully, if you were watching this, hopefully this was helpful and I was be able to be clear. Um, so thank you guys. Thank you guys. So Trevor, I don't have the Pixis yet. I am I'm trying to work with I'm trying to work with Blackmagic to see if I can get one over, but I have to wait till everybody else till the initial shippings go through first. Then then their PR's team will start getting theirs that they can loan out to people like me. So I'm probably like it's probably going to be at the very least probably near the end of the back half of October before I can get a loaner. I'm still keeping. I still haven't seen the Amazon post yet, so I'm still waiting for the one for that one. But all due time, in all due time, it's going to be mine. But thank you guys for watching, everybody, and hopefully you guys enjoyed this. And make sure again to hit that like, and as always, until next time, take care, everyone.